Hello, hello. Welcome to today's conversation. We have Audrey Faust with us today, talking about coaches and cash conversations. So excited. If you're a coach, consultant, expert, you're charging people for the information and knowledge that you bring into the world, we want to have this conversation with you today because we see way too many coaches, even those who are in the seven figures, not making money. They're not bringing it home. You're spinning your wheels. You start off and you're getting to that like first six figures, maybe even second, and the cash is coming in, you're getting excited and you're making money. Then you start to scale and you're doing other things and buying all the systems, right? And then like all of a sudden you're getting ready to file. You're like, how come I don't have cash coming back into my bank account? Audrey is here to help us have all of these conversations, mistakes that coaches make, clients that she has that, have been able to overcome these challenges. So I'm super excited. Audrey, I would love for you to share a little bit with everybody about who you are and what your expertise is, who you work with, and then we'll dive into those three or more. I mean, the list is never ending, right? Of things that mistakes coaches are making that are hitting them in the wallet.
Yes. Hi, Jodi. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. This kind of started with Jodi and I had a conversation, and it turned into a video that we are now going to share with you. This is awesome. So I'm Audrey Faust, if you don't know me, and I typically work with service-based businesses that range from 2 to 10 million. And I function as their business advisor and their fractional CFO and help them grow their businesses. But today I have a lot of coaching friends, and I've worked with coaches in the past because I see this specific challenge that coaches have, like Jodi says, around cash. And I hold coaches near and dear to my heart. So I wanted to offer some help in that area. And that's why I'm here today.
Thank you, Audrey. Let's dive in. I know we've some of the things that we want to talk about today. Let's jump in and start with what is typically a social media conversation, but it's very, very much tied into cash flow as well. Let's talk about those vanity metrics in people's businesses and where they're making mistakes.
So you see it all over the internet. I want to create a 6-figure, a 7-figure, an 8-figure business, right? And as coaches, often, we get wrapped up in that, right? I'm a coach too, and I get wrapped up. I want a 7-figure coaching business. But I know coaches who may have a 7-figure coaching business, but they have over 7 figures in expenses. Right. So, I mean, if that's happening, technically you're working for free. And that's what I tell coaches. Like, can't get so wrapped up in that top vanity metric number that you're not focusing on the money that's going out to get to that number. So, I've heard several 7-figure coaches get to the end of the year with their CPAs, and their CPA is like, what are you doing? You're not making any money. Like, something's got to change here. But the clients that I work with, they would know along the way, because I've trained them to look at their numbers every month, so and look and see like where their numbers should be in different areas. Based on
so like your number one rule is like know your numbers. What numbers are important for people to know?
So typically your highest number is going to be either your labor, right? Subcontractors or employees. And the metric that I use with that is it shouldn't be more than 50% of your revenue. And if it is, then let's figure out where the problem is. Mm-hmm. And that's where we dive a little deeper. But know your numbers is also know how much it costs to keep your business out of the red every month. Know how much money you need to bring in every single month on a consistent basis to, like I say, keep the lights on. All of my clients know that number and can rattle it off their head, just like that. So I've trained them to know it, to function, and then they actually get really, really nervous if they don't hit that number one month. So, and you're going to have fluctuation, right? So you're not going to always, you are going to have a slow month that you don't hit that number. But it's kind of funny that I've had clients that never looked at their numbers until they've gone to their accountant at year end and then are like super surprised. But once they start working with me, they're like not hitting that number one month and they're getting really nervous. And we're talking about, you know, in June or something that they know this. So it's great to see my clients do a 360 like that.
I love that. Yeah. So I'm guessing, so it would be important, you know, I know like for myself, like we have like a baseline operations budget of like, what does it cost? Like if we're not doing any launches, if nothing's happening this month, we're not investing in ads or lead gen, like what is just the like you said, just keep the lights on. What do I have to pay myself? What do I need to pay, say my VA or my ops manager? Maybe I have maybe all of my systems and subscription services. What is that baseline every month? I know I have to pay this much budget. And then beyond that, you get kind of like into planning of, okay, I'm expecting, then you have your goals for cash to come in, of revenue that you sold, and compare that against kind of the cash flow, because as maybe if you're doing a launch, maybe you put money into ads, maybe you have to hire an extra support person to help you manage the live event that you're putting on or whatever. So all of that needs to go into budgeting for those incremental expenses that come up, say during a launch phase. Then figuring out, okay, those were added expenses. So like, what was the true ROI on that launch and the expenses that were tied to it, to be like, okay, great. Like it's, I think a little more simple from an ads perspective, where we've done it with a lot of our clients of, okay, you spend this much in ad spend and then you sold this much. So you have a 4X, 10X, 20X return, which was yay. But what people lose sight of, and again, I think some of those are vanity metrics as well. Like, oh my gosh, we spent $10,000 in ad spend and we sold $50,000 worth of our course. We made $40,000. All of those things feel really good, except for the fact that you also paid an extra person to help you $2,000 during that 3-week launch.
2 or 3.
Right. You also paid to have a video created. You now have to deliver the course and you're going to need someone to pay, there's an extra person you're bringing on to pay for that or whatever. So yeah, keeping in mind all of your numbers and budgeting. And then also, I think, which would tailor more into like this next conversation of how your baseline budget and then this incremental budget that happens, especially if you're you have things like launches that ebb and flow throughout the year. How do you manage cash flow in situations like that, where it feels like so much, but then it feels like so little?
Month. Right, exactly. So like a lot of coaches love the pay in full plan, right? We've talked about that. And it's great because you do, as a coach, have a lot of expenses going out for your launch, your ads, your team during the launch, or you're working more and harder. So you will have a little bit more in expenses in that first month. And I think this is where some people fail to see why coaching is such a high ticket, right? Because there's so much time, energy, and effort and money in getting your clients that spent, and people don't see that. They look at, your coaching program costs $3,000, but I'm not getting X number of hours, and they're like doing the math, right? Yeah. What they don't realize is all the other money, all the rest of the money and time that is spent in just getting to that place. So, I like to, and some coaches don't realize all that as well, right? That's like, oh gosh, when they're pricing their packages, that make sure you're charging enough so it's going to cover all of that. So it's not just the time that you're delivering the coaching, it's all the other things.
Because you only have two main levers, right? Like you can charge more, or you can have more people enroll in the program. both of those will drive them up. And then the flatline operation costs that went into that launch become a smaller percentage of what you paid to acquire each of those people, because it's distributed. Right. So you either need more people or a higher ticket to bring them in and make sure you're covering your costs. And things that I think are important for people to budget for too is not just like, oh, what was this launch? And it's going to get me through the next 3 months until my next launch. But what part of that are you also putting aside to support your next launch ahead of time? Like, part of what you make from this launch should be something you set aside in a special account for your next launch that's already there and ready to go, so that it's not this like, okay, let me scrap things together. It always happens in your first one. But if you have a business that's been running for a while, you know, none of this is truly a surprise, right? So it's like having maybe multiple accounts set up, or how do you advise people manage because I think there's a psychological of like, when we see that big number in our accounts.
Yeah.
And I know that, I know Mike Michalowicz talks about
I'm on vacation.
Yeah. It's like, you know, what is it? Pareto's law. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, like when you see a whole bunch there, you're spending more, everything feels good because it feels big and you're not really living on a budget. You're living on checking refresh on your bank account and going, oh, it still looks good. Right. Versus like, oh no, this is my budget. And some people are like, what do you mean not having it? Like, yes, for some people, they are very budget conscious, but you'd be surprised how many people it is. They're just like refreshing and like, oh yeah, as long as I don't go under this much, I'm comfortable and I can keep spending what I'm doing without planning ahead of like, well, but when's that next thing going to be coming in, and making sure that you're keeping your foot on the gas for like lead gen and marketing and other things that are going to fuel that next launch when it comes in, to keep you stable in the in-between.
Yeah, definitely, Jodi. And that brings me back to the pay in full. What I like to advise people is pay in full, like, doesn't mean you get all this, you get all the money, let's say in October, right? But have a savings account to draw that money out monthly till your next launch, right? That's a simple way, a simple tip that you can use to like, okay, I just had, a $20,000 launch, $50,000 launch. Now let's take some of that money and put it in my savings account. Let's take some other money and put it in a tax savings account. That's what people forget to save for too, because it's too late. So, and if you're not looking at your numbers every month, you're not even going to know what your net profit is to be able to put an appropriate amount away for taxes. So I always tell my clients, we keep an eye on that bottom line. And if it's growing too big, let's put some extra money away in the savings account for taxes, right? It's great that you're making more profit. Awesome. But let's not get surprised or get excited about all that money we have now. Let's put it away because Uncle Sam's going to want his share.
Absolutely. And God forbid you get knocked into a next tax bracket.
Right?
Like, I was only $5,000 over. Knock me back down.
I know. And that's the other thing some smaller businesses get wrapped up in. They come to the end of the year and they don't want to pay taxes. But let me tell you what, if you're not paying taxes, you're not making money, and that means you're working for free. So it's not a good thing to not pay taxes, because that means you're working for free. You might as well go get a full-time job. You'll make more money.
Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about that for a little bit of, I know you've got some thoughts around, working for free and how to make sure that you're not, and all of the pitfalls of, especially I think in the coaching space, because we're such givers, right? Like,
yeah.
So what are some of your opinions on that, or viewpoints on coaches getting paid for what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of viewpoints on that. Like, coaches are givers, and there's many coaches I've come across that are coaching, especially just coming into the industry, they're coaching for free. And they're afraid to charge. That's a whole nother subject, probably a whole nother life. But
that's a whole other mindset training that Audrey can take you through.
Yes. But yes, coaches are givers, and I mean that's what makes them amazing. But often, like I said, they don't account for all of their time. They don't value themselves where they should, and a lot of the times they're not valuing themselves where they should because of their money mindset, because of their own confidence or value. And that takes a little bit to build up. And sometimes working with a coach on that will help yourself and building that up. But you really, I think the biggest thing is just looking at the whole picture. Just make sure you're looking at the whole picture, not just, okay, I'm charging X number of dollars for an hour of my time, because that's not really just an hour of your time. There's all these other things that come into that hour of your time that you're giving. There's the, Voxer messaging. If you have Voxer, there's the, all the other support services that you're offering your client that are valuable, and your knowledge is invaluable too, right? It's super valuable. And sometimes, including myself, I know we all get there, like we don't even realize it, right? We don't realize how much we know.
Not to mention it took, it took most of us, we've all spent 5, 10, 20 years learning our craft, becoming becoming intuitive about it because we're so close to it and have been in it for so long. So it's a double-edged sword where one, to us, it's second hat. We don't realize the genius that is being shared, but two, yes, you can charge for that. And yes, you may only spend 20 minutes with someone, but the value they gain from you is based on your 20 years of experience. Like, don't think about charging them for, it was only 20 minutes or an hour.
Or not charging them.
Right. Yeah, because, it was this, it was a coffee conversation, it was whatever. It was, but the information that you shared that's going to help propel them forward in their life and their business and their relationships is based on the fact that you've put in the work and done the study and the time to get there over years. Exactly. It took you, how many hours and how many years of work to become the expert that you are. And that is valuable and it's worth something.
Yes. Absolutely. And the other thing I like to say, about your time is not free. We had a little conversation just about this. Like, you have a team and they're there for a reason. Most likely you have a team, they're there for a reason, and use them. Like, focus your time on the 5% of things that are going to move the needle. Give everything else to your team. Because, what's going to grow your business? What's the actual task that you should be doing to grow your business? Not just, editing videos or we were just talking about that, or things like that you can say, okay, I can just give this to my team. They have this, and sometimes you also think it's going to take you 5 or 10 minutes, and then an hour goes by and you're like, I should have just given this to my VA because now I've spent an hour of my time doing this.
Yes. So, not to mention, I think a huge gap for people, and time is money. Money loves speed. So the faster you can do something, the more money that you'll make. That comes from making decisions, getting something launched, making offers. But it's also, time can be costing you money if you're the wrong person doing it. And there could be someone else doing it more efficiently. And even if it takes you just a little bit, understanding that it's not just even, the 15 or 30 minutes it took you maybe to do something, like scheduling an appointment, going back and forth with a client, like, let's get this calendared, like have a VA schedule it, manage your calendar for you and your appointments, because the context switching you have and all of the decisions you need to make throughout the day, all of that is costing you mental energy and additional time as well, because it takes you time to get in and out of flow. Like if you are the subject matter expert and you're creating content, like it takes you time to get into flow and to really get yourself into that thought process of mapping something out and the creative process, not to mention if you're filming, like doing your hair, doing your makeup, like there's all these things, right? But if you're constantly then being pinged, managing your own inbox, managing your own calendar, editing videos, it's like, you're bouncing back and forth between all things. You're never fully present.
Right.
And it costs you time to ramp up and down in between each of those tasks as well.
Absolutely. And there's studies around that. For every interruption you have, it costs you 20 minutes. So you get an email, 20 minutes. Like, oh, I can answer that email in 2 seconds. No, you've just cost yourself 20 minutes. Like, so blocking your time, and we're getting on a whole different subject, but blocking your time is key. But, you know, the other thing I like to say is if you are working in someone else's business, doing everything that you do as a business owner for someone else, working the hours that you work for someone else, what would you be charging them for your expertise, for your time, and for your energy? Like, because that's where a lot of business owners, coaches, consultants, all the above tend to devalue their own time in that they spend working in their business, because they're like, oh, it'll take me 15 minutes. And, you know, but you add, as you said, you add up all those 15 minutes that you could be working on doing something that's more in your lane, your videos that are actually gonna, you know, your expertise videos and things like that, where you have to be the one doing it. Like, that's the more important stuff. That's what's gonna push the needle, is if you're focusing on the 5% that you really need to do. And usually it is only 5% of all of the tasks of your business.
Right. It's that critical conversation, the joint venture, the relationship, the networking, the sales, the creative content for your course, and the next thing, setting up, the agenda and the outline for those, like that. Those are the critical points that, you know, only you can do. And I love that. Kind of as we're getting ready to wrap things up here, what is one other thing I know, you know, that people can do to shore up their businesses to make that from a business perspective? Because I think we look at like our coaching businesses, like a coaching practice, and it has all the things I like and the things I need. Yeah. But from a business perspective and from a financial perspective, what are some other things people need to set up to protect themselves, so that like cash flow isn't an issue if something, because things will happen. I know you've got some tips around that for them as well.
Great question, Jodi. So one thing, I don't care what kind of business you have, coaching or consulting, any kind of service-based business, any kind of business, period. I advise every single person I know or am a client is one of my clients, is have a line of credit as a backup. Because even if you never use it, even if you never use it, it isn't very expensive to go to your bank, whoever you bank with, and say, I want to get a business line of credit. And just get it small one to begin with, you know, $10,000 or, you know, something of that respect, and just have it sitting there. You can always increase it if you need more. If you never use it, that $10,000 is sitting there and it's fine. Why? Couple of reasons. One, it's a cheaper interest rate than a credit card. Of course, you can get a credit card with a 0% or whatever, all that. Sometimes that takes time to and you need it right away, right? Like, oh, I need to, you know, this right away. Well, if I want to apply for a new credit card until I get it in the mail, then you're talking a couple weeks later. So putting it on your regular credit card or whatever, like that's going to be a higher interest rate than using a line of credit. The other thing is you're building your credit in your business, which is very key. Just like your personal credit report number, your business has a credit number too. Mm-hmm. So the sooner you start building credit in your business, especially if you want to grow it very large, the better it's going to be. So as soon as you open your business, you know, get a very low line of credit. Most banks won't even blink at a $10,000 line of credit, and they'll just approve you, whatever, based on your credit rating, your personal credit rating. So once you get something like that, and it's a business line of credit, it'll start creating a credit score in your business, not just your personal. So credit cards don't always do that. They're often tied to your personal credit and not your business credit. depending on how the credit card company does. So that's one thing I like to advise, like just get that line of credit. It doesn't really cost that much. It's a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't not pay your people. That's one thing. Like whether they're subcontractors or employees, you can't not pay your people. Or they won't be working for you anymore. So
that brings up another. Yeah, that brings up another question, I think, and I think that it might be the last one we have time for today. But
sure.
So I know a lot of coaches, like, they go through all of these programs and they're pretty much trained to be like chief marketing officers, and they're building their content, they're learning how to market it, they're learning how to sell it. But as far as like running a business, and then you're bringing on not even employees, but contractors, but it's this like, it's kind of a mix because you have them for a long time typically, and they become part of your team, even though they're freelancers or contractors. So, for, when you're looking at the stability of your business, like what type of savings should your business have to make sure that you have what you need, like if something happens, or, how, I know, like, from a personal perspective, where, the rule of thumb is usually like, have at least 3 to 6 months reserves. So what kind of reserves do you advise, like for people in business or people in like the coaching space? Because like thinking about, oh my gosh, 6 months in reserves, one, they would need to know what their monthly number is, right? Like, what do I need to keep the lights on? Because that 6 month number may not be as high as you think it is. And does it need to be 6 months, 3 months? Like what kind of framework do you advise?
I usually like 3 months, but I also use that line of credit as a backup too. Mm-hmm. So in bigger businesses, they don't often have, or smaller even, they don't often have the ability to have that savings account. They're often paying their vendors a lot of times before they're getting their money in. So there's not always that room to actually have a large savings account. But if you're very adverse to getting a line of credit, I would say your line of credit should be that 3 month number. 3 months of your monthly number should be what you get your line of credit for. Your monthly keep the lights on number. Yeah. So, but if you're like totally against credit, which some people are, like I would say, okay, yes, then have a 3 month savings account as your backup. Mm-hmm. But it really depends on your business. A lot of businesses are running, like I said, they're paying their vendors before they're even getting the money in from their clients. So there's that whole cycle that they don't often have a huge savings account, unless they have a very huge profit margin.
Right.
So, and then they're like saving a lot of times for taxes, if that's the case. So, but yeah, so like I always like 3 months, whether it's personal or business or line of credit or whatever it is, your safety net. I feel like 3 months is usually good. I mean, even if you look back at COVID, right? That, was less than 3 months that we were really shut down. Yeah. Where businesses like had to, really it was like a month where business, it wasn't even a month, I don't think, where some businesses had to completely shut down. Now, if you're, there were other businesses like the restaurants and so forth, but even that, I feel like they had something in place.
In a month, you're pivoting, you're finding other things to come in. So even, that's right. I like that 3 month reserve mark, because even if you have 3 months reserves, you could probably stretch it to 6, even if things were really bad, because you're not, for 3 months, it's not like you're not making any money, right? You're probably still bringing in something that's offsetting what that monthly minimum is. So even if things were bad and you had a 3 month reserve that could completely, if you got $0 and could take care of you, you could probably stretch it for at least 6 while you're getting yourself back on track, because you're probably bringing something and it just may not be what you're used to.
Exactly. Yeah.
A good number.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much. And I know, a lot of this, again, setting you up for success, protecting you for when things aren't. Audrey has so much knowledge, and the people that she works with are so lucky to have that experience with her. And Audrey, how would people reach out to you if they want to talk to you about, where they're at with their businesses, and tips and advice for you to help them keep their cash?
Keep their cash. I love that. So you can reach out to me at audreyfaustconsulting.com. Now, you're not going to see anything on there about me working with coaches, but I do offer an unadvertised VIP day that I work with coaches. I don't really put that up anywhere. It's selective, and I can help you in one day, like get a complete handle on your numbers, and so you feel confident and secure, and you know your numbers, and teach you how to understand them, read your financial statements, and continue that good business sense through there. Help you even get a line of credit and what you need and all the things. So that's kind of how I work with coaches is the VIP day. Larger businesses, I work with 2 to 10 million service-based businesses. That's kind of my primary niche, and where I offer business advice and fractional CFO.
Love it. All right, guys, if you want to reach Audrey, she's at audreyfaustconsulting.com. You can also find her and messenger her on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. She's in all the places.